What are we experiencing in our relationships? There's the relationship of immaturity, which is commotional, with fantasies and dilemmas, misappropriations. And there's maturity of relationships, which is discussion, alchemy, and wholeness. So let's look at the immature relationship. So, when we are quite commotional in our fantasies, our dilemmas, basically we are still ruled by the childhood. Okay? All of us, either we are willing to admit it or not, we all carry wounds, irritations. And when we are immature, we are very triggered and we don't know how to mediate the trigger. So for a lot of people, the trigger can become some raging drama, just fire, 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 exploding everywhere. Or it can be emotional in the way that we're a hose with holes in it and we're just spraying all over the place. And then that leads to misappropriations where someone says something, the other person interprets it in a way that's hurtful. Nobody really says anything or expresses their feelings, and that creates this elephant in the room. And we all know an elephant in the room when there's just something that's not being said. There's some sort of irritation or agitation within the relationship, but we don't have the maturity of discussion to actually vocalize ourselves, because when we're commotional and when we're caught in our fantasies, okay, basically from our childhood wounds and irritations and low self-esteem from the childhood, we don't know how to express ourselves in a way that mediates the situation. Meaning, we get volatile, the other person misappropriates that, and then they get hurt, and then we shut off, or they shut off, and then that does not create any sort of alchemy for more wholeness within the relationship. Okay? So, when it comes to the crossover, so the crossover from the immature relationship where it's just misappropriated, there's just a bunch of misunderstandings, we're not communicating ourselves or expressing ourselves as actually remedying the situation, but just creating this pink elephant in the room, or this unspoken feeling that really is just festering away until for a lot of people it becomes this great big explosion, or it could just end the relationship altogether. Okay, it festers and festers and festers inside of us within the relationship, the dimension of the relationship. Okay, two people creating this third entity, which is the couple. And when the couple dimension is just this festering elephant or this agitation, that it rises and rises, and then a lot of times, since we don't know how to mediate, it just ends the relationship. Okay, but usually when we end relationship in such way, we kind of go backwards. Okay, meaning the point of the triggers is for us to learn how to resolve ourselves, not how to resolve somebody else, how to get them to learn how to resolve their own wounds and irritations and agitations and low self-esteem from their own childhood. It's for us to learn how can we find talents, tools, methods of relating to self that can remedy, that can resolve these triggers, so that we can discuss these triggers, remedy these triggers, and come to wholeness with these triggers. So instead of the triggers being just some deep sabotage or shame or emotional suppression, it can become a way for us to bring art, to bring enjoyment, acceptance, deeper compassion. And that's how we begin to cross over into a more mature relationship, where there is this experience of depth, of meaning, of discovery. And when I mean meaning, it's like when you are listening to or reading philosophy, there's great meaning because you are unraveling the many layers of your psyche. Now, you may not see it as that, but we all have a psyche, and within that psyche we have all kinds of just emotional suppression from the childhood, father issue, mother issue, where we feel abandoned, pretty much everything from ages 0 to 6, okay, is where our subconscious is formed. And our subconscious really comes forward to the forefront when we're in a relationship, because a partnership is designed to help us get a better relating to self and to life. So if our relating to self in life is based on a subconscious formation from 0 to 6, that is sabotage, shame, emotionally suppressing ourselves, not knowing how to mediate your emotions, shutting down, getting angry and just lashing out and spraying everybody with your whatever sort of thing, or just being agitated and building until woo, it's just too much. Okay, relating to life is what partnership is showing us, how we can better relate to ourselves and relate to our childhood. So for a lot of us, that whole commotion and that whole fantasy that we have in our relationships, and that whole dilemma and that drama of relationship, is simply we are looking at the fantasies and dramas of our childhood subconscious. So whatever we saw from our caretakers, our mom and dad, we kind of reenact that. Okay, or we reenact the father archetype if we're a female, okay, or we reenact the relationship between our father and mother in our relationships until we begin to cross over into a mature sort of relationship. Okay, so those people who basically cycle back, meaning they're in these relationships, they don't really get it, okay, they get triggered, they get overwhelmed, they get agitated, they get irritated, and what they do is, instead of find the remedy, find the resolution, find the breakthrough, find the deeper discussion with self, find the compassion or the awareness or the meditation, they're just like, and we always kind of cycle back to square one. So every relationship is an opportunity for us to discover how we can remedy, how we can resolve, how can we mediate, how can we create deeper discussion, how can we face our own sort of wounds with more sense of compassion, and how can we create more boundaries with our relationship. Okay, that's an important one. More boundaries and more discernment. Okay, and that overall affects our total life, not just our intimate life, but our co-working life, our neighbor life, all of this kind of thing, and our life with our body and our mind and our energy, our spirit, and our relating to nature and to Mother Gaia and everyone else. So on the planet right now, we are being called by Mother Earth to really improve our relating to life. Because our relating to life is, we have the sting, we have the burn, we have the poison of our childhood, and everything's misappropriated, and there is really no discussion, remedy, or wholeness. And then we take that out into the world. We're very angry. We don't know how to chill, we don't know how to chill in a way that is going to benefit ourselves and everyone around us. We are emotionally suppressed, and that leads to emotional, kind of just, just bad mojo, bad when we have emotional kind of just, just festering inside. It just doesn't create good mojo. Okay, what's mojo? It's like good chi, good emotional chi. You tend to have more of a glow. Okay, but when you're just emotionally just in this constant festering with yourself, it really doesn't help you to experience a more sensitive, intuitive life. Just a more numb and kind of sort of life, okay? So with moving and crossing over into a more mature relationship, I say discussions as like a foundation, because without discussions, it's like everything is kind of just misappropriated in our relationships. we, as women, we're not without that discussion relationship with ourselves where we can really express like what makes me happy, what doesn't make me happy, what makes me feel safe in a relationship or in an environment. If we don't really have the discussion or dialogue with ourselves, then we don't really know how to express our needs. And when we don't know how to express our needs, it's like, how can the partner help us? It's like, let me help you, help me, okay? But if we don't have that with ourselves, like a lot of women, we don't really get real with what we want. Okay, and then we kind of expect the partner to know what we want, and then if it's a male, he's probably just like, this is too complex. I'm not complex. And that's men. They're just not complex. They don't have it in their system to be complex as women. So women, we have to be kind of very clear, a lot more clear than men. Okay, because men are naturally more dense. So if we are kind of like just so disorganized and disfiled with kind of what we need, then it's going to be very, very difficult for our partner to actually give us what we need, because we're just kind of all disfiled all over the place, okay? And that just creates more of a misappropriation where we're not getting what we want, but we said we want this, and then we get that, but it's not what we really want, because we're not having a dialogue with ourselves, our own internal meditative practice. So with remedy, all of this is more so focused on the self, not so much on the other and placing that on the other, okay? It's more so focusing on the self. Okay, and when we really focus on our own discussion with ourselves, our own remedy and our own wholeness within ourselves, when we come forward, we're coming forward with something that is clear, rather than something that is, commotional and fantasy and dilemma and drama and all this kinds of stuff. We're coming forward clear. And I feel like when we come forward clear through our own kind of going within and taking that time through the boundaries and discernment to kind of like really check in, when we come forward clear, we're actually creating more of a bond with our partner, because a bond, we all want to experience love and we all want to have that bond. But that bond is not there through commotion or fantasy or dilemma or drama. It's not that creates a bond. That creates what we call this psychological whirlwind, where we are psychologically interlocked in this sort of whirlwind of this sort of relay we have with that person. And it may be energizing or it may be exhausting, but whatever way, we're not wanting to interlock with somebody in a psychological sort of dance that doesn't really bring us deeper into the heart or deeper into our desire to want to create together. So every relationship is about, we want to create together. Okay, that's the whole yin-yang, that's the whole principle of masculine and feminine within each of our bodies, either you're woman or you're man. That dynamic created, we could say, by God or just nature, Mother Gaia, is there for us to create. Okay, like Shiva, we could create or we could destroy. Okay, or Vishnu, we can dream up the world. But in order for us to dream up the landscape we would like to experience in this physical world, we have to have that dynamic, that relationship with the man and the female. Or if same sex, basically with that dynamic within yourself. Okay? There's always that dynamic, that polarity happening in whatever same-sex relationship. It's always happening. Because that polarity helps us to create. We have to create in our partnership, or we're destroying. Okay? And they're kind of happening simultaneously. We are destroying or putting to rest all of those, festering things that we do, the sabotaging things that we do. We're putting to rest, we're destroying those sort of tendencies or habits so that we can have more creative room okay? More creative room to actually begin to build. We all want to build in a partnership, okay? And that's not, it could be physical, like tangible building of like a home, or it could be emotional. We want to create a bond that has security, that has consistency, that has been tried and true. Or it can be, friendship-wise. There's so many things. We want to be naturally creative with each other, and when we're not in our partnerships, a lot of times it's because we're still dealing with that childhood irritation, agitation, and trigger, and we don't know how to mediate it. We don't know how to remedy it appropriately. And I mean appropriately. There's ways where we can mediate or remedy that thing, but a lot of time it's not very beneficial. It can be very numbing. A lot of people are doing through a numbing thing. But that numbing thing, when we desensitize ourselves, we lose a lot of our creative vision, okay? Vision. When we numb and desensitize, basically we lose the majority of our creative vision. Because a creative vision is how sensitive and how intuitive you are. Okay, it's not, you know what I'm saying? So, in a sensitivity and intuition, it's a very vulnerable state with ourselves. And vulnerable as in, we have to be deeply compassionate, deeply accepting, and deeply nervous system strong to be able to take in those wounds and those memories, and to not collapse or to not give in to the rage and the dilemma and the misappropriation, misunderstanding with it. But take it and evolve it. So that's a pretty big, big statement. So take your childhood and evolve it. So if your mother and father had this sort of relationship dynamic where they would check out or shut down, and you're doing that in your relationships now, you can kind of stay in that. And you can revolve through that kind of thing, cycle through that in your many, many relationships. But there's going to come a point when you can decide to evolve it. And I believe that's kind of what we're doing on the planet, or being called to, is we're being called to cross over from immature sort of, you did me wrong, how dare you, I'm so upset, you fucked me over, you loser, and blah, 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 that kind of commotion that you basically are having with, your childhood. That's like, oh my God, I didn't get what I wanted as a child, I didn't get the toy, oh, my dad was never home, I'm so pissed. Or my mom, she always had random men over the house, I'm pissed. To recognize we have that child, and through the crossing over is to evolve it. Find a meditation, a tool, a method that brings you a feeling of strength. A feeling of strength. And that's kind of what we're being asked, not a feeling of, let me just, leave this relationship in the festering. I'm festered and they're festered, and we're just kind of halting and hesitating and kind of prolonging the festering. No, let us grow stronger. And create discussion, remedy, and wholeness with ourselves, so that when we come forward, we're clear. And if the other person is not, there, that's okay. Because remember, life is showing you how can you relate to life better, not how you can fix somebody and get them to see your point of view and get them to figure you out and figure their life out. How can you relate to life better, where you feel more capable of being a loving human being and accepting and enjoying the time on earth? So I'll leave you guys with this.